Hello, Horse14T here, and today we are going to do part 2 of our NIF tutorial, in which we give this unicorn here the ability to blink. Now, right now, there is one thing missing from our folder here with all of our textures and stuff, and that is the blinking texture. And to find that, we need to go to the main ZT2 folder, which can be found under Program Files 86, Microsoft Games, ZT2. In this case, I have a folder labeled Clean. That's the one with no mods except for the widescreen, my fan patch, the Dino Danger Pack from MJ, and FOM's cheat codes. Now you can have as many folders as you want for various different reasons. And they all load the same as long as you load it from the exe within that folder. In which I have a lot because I do a lot of modding and experimenting. But anyway, let's go find that blinking texture for our unicorn. Now in this case, I'm using Ultimate Collection. In Extinct Animals, it'll look like this, with a lot more of these folders here. And if you have Extinct Animals, you would want to go and open the entities Z2F here. But in this case, I'm going to use UC because that's just what most people have, in which I want to open the 300 dash or underscore 000 here. And we open this and we're graded with a bunch of this. And we go to Entities, Units, Animals, and Shared. And right here, this is the texture we want, this Tiger Blink texture. So I'm going to click on that, drag it, and I'm going to go back to our folder here. Click it, and drag it in here. And there we go, there it is, right there. That's it, that's what we want there. And so now, we cannot do blinking in this version of NifScope, the 2.0. And the reason for that is, if I go to Texture, Edit UV here, and right click on it, Select Coordinate Set does not work in 2.0. It should have a 0 texture, a 1 texture, and then a 0 texture once we duplicate current. But if I actually do that, duplicate, it doesn't actually duplicate it. And that's the problem. And we don't, so that's why we don't want to use this version, unfortunately. So we're going to actually close this. No. Because unfortunately you cannot have two different versions of NifScope open at the same time. So instead, I'm going to right click on our save file here. You can rename this by now to unicorn or anything like that if you want to. Anyway, I'm going to right click on here and click open with. Now NifScope won't appear here. I think that's just a thing with the app in particular. So I'm going to go choose another app and it'll be in my list here. If it's not in your list, however, you can click on more apps, look for another app on this PC, and then you can navigate to wherever you put NifScope and do it that way. But for now, since it's in my list, I'm going to open 1.1.3 because that's the version that you can do blinking on, and click OK. And now we have our model open in here. Now, this is perfectly normal for the model to be completely white like this. And in order to change that, because we're going to need to be able to see the eye, we just I just clicked on the model so it can bring me here. And on the texturing property here, we want to right click, texture, add decal 0 map, and that'll bring us here. And I don't want to be in the P file folder here, so let's go here, click on Tiger Blink, open, and this is perfectly normal. We're going to fix that in a bit. But with the unicorn texture here, we're going to go texture, right click, texture, choose, and then we're going to choose our body texture, and now we have it here. I'm not going to do the main because that's not really important to what we're doing. And so now we want to right click, texture, edit UV, and then using left click, we want to select all of this, right click, select coordinate set, and see how now it's different. There's 0 here. We want to click duplicate current, and now we have 2. Right now we want to set all of these at 1. So 0 needs to be the body texture, which it is right now, and then it should be partnered to the base texture. So these should be partnered like it is here. Now we want to click on decal 0 texture and change the 0 to 1. So now the one coordinate set and the decal 0 texture should be partnered with each other. This can be finicky. See, now it changed when I select the base texture to the 0 texture. That's exactly what we want. This can be tricky. I have been I've had to do these before, before, because it kind of messed up. So it can get a bit screwy and finicky. If you mess up, you'll have to do it over again. So always make sure you back up your exported file. In this case, I'm going to do that here by right click, copy, and then paste. And that'll be my backup, just in case this goes sour somehow, because I've had that happen before and it's very annoying. Now, what we want to do back in this editor here, make sure you have your one coordinate set selected on the decal 0 texture. And what we want to do is we want to select everything except for the eye here. Now the eye is usually this kind of shape here, but depending on your model, it may be a different shape. And what we want to do in order to select multiple of these without selecting the eye here is we want to hold down Shift and then left click. And that'll allow us to select all of these without deselecting any previous selection. So again, hold down Shift and just select all of these things here. Okay, we got that done. Now right click, scale and translate selected, and we want to just move this to 0 and click OK. And now it's just a little dot and our unicorn here is all black. That's perfectly normal. You just click on the little yellow dot here and you move it to, say, the corner over here. So now our unicorn is back to the way it should be. And the eye here, see how it moves over the eye here on this? That's exactly what we want. And what we want to do is we want to make this bigger. You don't have to make it bigger, but you could just drag, but it can make things a little easier. So in this case, let's see what 4 looks like. That looks fine. And you cannot shrink this after you scale it. So if you are unhappy with the scaling, like you made it a bit too big, just hit Control Z and you can start over. You cannot shrink it, it will not work. Now, in the default game, this is pretty much the normal orientation you have, with the darker side, the bigger side here, being on the top, and the smaller side here, the smaller, lighter side, being on the bottom. This is why animals in ZT2 tend to have, when they're blinking, their bottom lid goes up first, and then the top lid comes down. If you want to avoid that, you can right-click here, rotate selected, and then you can flip over. You usually need to use a pretty big number. This can be disorientating, so try to have a landmark. So my landmark here is that these two triangles are smaller than all the rest of them. And so, okay. See, that barely did anything, right? So you need to have a relatively large number, usually. In this case, 20 didn't work, so I'm going to go for 40 and see how that works. So now it's sideways. Undo. You can just continue to rotate it until you get happy. But for me, I like to just start over. That's almost good. 20. So as you can see, I'm not starting over anymore. And there we go. That's neatly upside down, which is kind of what I want. Let's do another 40, see how that looks. See, that's a bit past what I wanted, but that's okay, because we can always just fix this. Yeah, so I lost my orientation there for a minute. So blank, that's almost there. Another 40. There we go. Now we have it where we want. So the line here should meet with the corner of your eye, relatively. And for this one, I'm just going to do it upside down because that's what a lot of modders like to do. You can always skip this rotation step if you want to. So now I'm going to scale it to the scaling of the eye, which is I want to cover the sclera, the iris, and the pupil here. So I just want to cover, whoopsie. So I just want to cover all of this as much as I can, and make it look pretty. So what you do is you always have to use this box. Don't just click on it, because if I do that, well, I'm only moving one side now. And we want to keep it as symmetrical as possible, just so you're not doing this kind of thing. So always select it with left click and then drag. So it's going to look a little messy at the beginning, and that's perfectly normal. So I'm just trying to line up the edges of the blinking texture with my unicorn's eye. And it may look a little bit weird, and that's okay. See, we had this little like dip in the middle there. That's okay. And then what you can do is you can move the middle part if you want to. In this case, I'm relatively happy with where it is right now. And then you just kind of fiddle with it until you're happy. And it doesn't matter if like the edges are clipping, because like most people are not going to really notice that anyway. And there we go. That should be about it. Now as you can see, the the line here is not lined up with the corner of the eye. We can fix that by kind of making a mess a little bit. So we want it down there, right? So, but it can be a bit tricky to fix some things like this. Again, using the rotation button can really help you with trying to orientate where exactly the halfway line is. So yeah, you can experiment. So right now I want to rotate it just a tiny bit and see how that looks. Oops, rotated a bit too much. So 10. That's a bit more workable. And again, it can be a tad tricky to really line up. So you want to be nice and patient with these things. Because this can, depending on how picky you are and how much of a perfectionist you are, this can take quite a bit of time to get a result you're happy with. So I think I'm relatively happy with where this is at right now. Always check both sides, because sometimes when you're working on the one side it may look good and then you look at the other side, it's like, oh, that's doesn't look right at all. But no, I think this looks just fine for our purposes. So now I am going to click on File, Save As, and I'm going to overwrite our current save file. Save. Do you want to replace it? Yes. And there you go. There is a warning I do have to put here. If you're picky about the order of the block list here, this version of NifScope may reset your order and you'll have to do it again. So I recommend that you just do the blinking before you transfer your model into the parent NIF. So do it while you're doing all the different blocks and editing and stuff before you transfer it to the parent NIF. But that's pretty much it. So now if we close this and open our new one, he should have blinking now. He should have an eye now. And if we go to texture, edit UV, while this still doesn't work, we should be able to select the texture slot and see this. And now in this version, you can edit the texture slot. You don't need to use 1.1.3 anymore. You can just edit the texture here, and it should be fine. But yeah, that's about it. And so I'll see you in part 3 where we code loads and go through all that. Any questions, just put it into the comments. And I'll see you in part 3.